Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Joseph Capps coming back to you again with another episode of our podcast and our YouTube channel, Dancing with the Darkness. I just want to thank everyone that's a return listener today. It's your support, your comments, your likes, your shares that is growing the channel and growing the podcast. And most of all, I value your comments and your feedback more than anything. I just want to thank those that have taken the time to comment. And whether it's positive or negative feedback, it doesn't matter. It gives me a tremendous amount of affirmation, validation for my own life and my own experiences, but it also helps me know what the audience needs, what those listeners out there are looking for as far as understanding and help, or even just a breakthrough with their CPTSD or their trauma journey. So thank you so much for that. If you're a first-time listener to the podcast, thank you so much for clicking on the video today. And I just want to give you an idea. This is a very raw, it is unapologetic. Sometimes there's language, sometimes there's some sensitive topics that we go over. If you are suffering from CPTSD or PTSD, anxiety, trauma, operator syndrome, you already know the things that you're experiencing. And so just a trigger warning, especially for today, we're going to talk about some very sensitive things in this video, but it's necessary. It's not just necessary based on what I've been feeling in my own heart, because I share from the heart on this channel. I talk about what I'm going through, and I try to make it into something that's going to be positive. And that is really the pinnacle of where we end up in our journey of healing, is when we are able to turn our pain into purpose, and that purpose being able to be someone that you can resonate with, that you can feel comfortable with, to make you feel like you are less alone in the world, and also to let you know that this is also a message of hope more than anything, because I would not be in this chair, I would not have this channel, I would not have been in practice for 17 years if it wouldn't have been for hope. And unapologetically, I will say in every video that my hope came from Jesus Christ and God. That is what saved me, and I was unable to adapt to therapy or to anything else until I accepted the forgiveness of God and was able to start learning how to forgive myself. It is a journey. I'm still there. I still find myself trying to forgive myself. So thank you so much. If this video speaks to you, please do us a favor, like, share. If there's somebody that you think would benefit from what I'm talking about today, please send it to them. And I'm pleading with you because I do not want there to be a 30+ year journey of ups and downs and not healing for individuals, because we do not go and get help. I was infamous for not going to get help, and the problem is that when I did go for help, there was misdiagnosis, there was the wrong drugs, there was all of these conundrums. And as we go through this channel and we speak more and more about CPTSD, that's one of the things that we talk about, is that there are so many comorbid things, there are so many crossovers when it comes to the DSM and mental health diagnosis, that it's very, very hard for us to get an accurate diagnosis of CPTSD, and to understand that the treatment for CPTSD is unlike anything out there. It is in layers, and we need to understand that it's in layers, and that it's a slow, arduous process, but we do get relief, we do heal. And what we're going to talk about today is going to talk about a little bit about that. Today we're going to talk about extremes. I was feeling this already in my own heart, and then speaking to clients this week, and the topic came up again. And for me, I don't look at anything as a coincidence. I believe that everything is ordained by God. I believe that everything that's placed on our heart and that is reinforced by others, especially other Christians, I believe that it's something that God wants us to put out there. And so I'm going to share from the heart today. Once again, there is a trigger warning on this video because there's going to be some personal things that we're going to talk about. And these things may cause you to enter into an emotional flashback or something like that. And I would encourage you, if you haven't, please look at our videos that talk about emotional flashbacks and stuff of that nature, because we give you some really good coping strategies so that when these things do come up, you can self-soothe and do what you need to do to calm down and regulate your nervous system. So when I talk about extremes with CPTSD, I want you to understand that it's everything that we do, okay? And I really feel like this is going to resonate with you guys today, because you're going to kind of look at your life and you're going to figure out that, yeah, we do everything in extremes. We do everything above and beyond everyone else. And I mean everything, okay? Not just the good, but the bad. And so it also, we have to bring up the fact that it's going to depend on what type of developmental trauma that you had. If it's more emotional, then you're going to have attributes of that. If it's more physical, you're going to have attributes of that. If it's sexual, you're going to have attributes of that. Now, I'm not really sure 100% what God's plan was for me, but I just remember that early on in therapy, when I finally decided to get help, I had a clinical psychologist that I respected very much, that was a so-called expert in PTSD and such, and her synopsis was very, very simple with me. She said, "You're a walking miracle," because there really is nothing in the books. There's nothing in studies. Even at this point, even myself spending a good majority of 20 years now studying every single thing there is on the topic, whether it be, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and all of his work with developmental trauma, the adverse childhood experiences scale. I mean, the whole 9 yards. I have studied it all. Okay, I have studied the effects of sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. All of that to say that I'm not completely unique. There's many of us out there that have experienced all three, that we were severely sexually, physically, and emotionally abused. God has a purpose for it, because there are so many that fall through the cracks. There are those that self-delete. There's lots of folks that don't make it, and so I need to honor my God, even though it's painful sometimes to re-experience these things and talk about them. I need to honor Him and throw this stuff out there, because there's somebody out there today, I know it in my heart, that needs to hear this. And so when we talk about extremes, we're talking about a lot of our psychological development. We've talked about this a lot in our videos. We've talked about the protocol that I've created, the treatment model that I've created, that is all-inclusive, holistic, and it starts from the beginning of life. And this is what we need to understand, that we need to understand who we are, how we got there, why do we do the things that we do, before we can ever experience any kind of healing, retribution, restoration, whatever it may be. There has to be a starting point. And that starting point is that we need to understand who we are and how did we get here and why do we do the things we do. So we talk about everything in this podcast in relation to that. And that is leading into what I mean by extremes. So when I say extremes, it's going to be everything that we do. And we're going to culminate all the way from what we do academically, in the workplace, all the way into relationships, so that you understand, okay? And we're going to do kind of a, I don't call this dancing with the darkness for nothing. We're going to talk about the light and the dark and how they pull at us. Carl Jung called it our shadow. We can call it whatever it is, but there is a light and a dark that's at war within us all of the time. And this goes back to the beginning of time. There were brilliant Indian medicine men that said that, hey, there's a white wolf and a black wolf, that's inside of you, and they're fighting for control, and whoever you nurture and feed the most is going to be the winner. And I truly do believe that. And then if we get into the spiritual sense, there is a presence of God in us. There is, the fact that we were created in His image, but there is also the scripture tells us principalities and dark forces and things not of this world that are pulling at us, okay? And they exploit all of the things, all of the pain, all of the weaknesses, all of the things that make us who we are today. And we need to be, very, very conscious of that. And that's why you'll hear me bring up faith a lot in this podcast, because it is way beyond clinical knowledge. It is way beyond experiential knowledge. There is also a huge spiritual component to this. And we need to understand that trauma has been around since the Garden of Eden. That was part of what happened when sin entered the world. We start right off with the very first siblings ever, twin brothers, and one kills the other. So we had murder immediately. So we need to understand that this is something that's been around since the beginning of mankind. So when I talk about extremes, I'm going to give you some experience from my life, and let's see if it's applicable to you. So being a child that was heavily sexually abused, not just by people outside my caregiving environment, but also by my caregivers, you become hypersexual. Okay, so this is one of the things that we need to understand that happens. Okay, as we're developing, you become hypersexual. Okay, and it's an environmental thing. Okay, so we start off in life with this type of abuse, and we get exploited, and all of these changes happen within us. Okay, it's not just the fawning part of our trauma where we are trying to navigate and, oh, if I do this, it makes them happy and they won't hurt me kind of thing. But it's also the fact that we have chemicals in our brain. Okay, and so, you know, we've talked about this before, but if you have a mother that, you know, conceives you and doesn't want you from the point of conception, this is, you know, the beginning of trauma. You know, Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this, and it's brilliant because he's right. We start experiencing those changes, even though we have a very undeveloped brain at the time. It does get stored back in the hippocampus and other areas of the brain, and it's there. And so we need to understand that the bonding hormones, the all of the good things that should have been happening while you're in the womb are not happening. So we've already got some trauma there. And so we come out of the womb. Then we have maybe this same parent is so abhorrent to us that they don't breastfeed. Their milk doesn't come in, okay? And I'm going to talk about why this is important. You know, when we are breastfeeding our mother, this is, you know, the oxytocin and all of these bonding hormones come out, okay? And this is part of our development. This is part of us learning what a relationship should look like, you know, what it is to be nurtured, what it is to be cared for, what it is to have safety. And this is fundamental. And so when these things are not present, like in my case, and you go straight on to formula, there's all kinds of things that happen. You know, God knew what he was doing. He designed all of this, you know, the colostrum and all of the vitamins and all of the immunity that comes through the mother's milk. So you're not just being deprived of that emotional attachment that you didn't have in the womb, and now you don't have because you're not breastfeeding with your mother, so you're not getting any kind of bonding. You are literally developing into a human being that has to be independent and take care of themselves, which develops into us doing the most common but least talked about part of the trauma response, fawning. And we've talked about that in several videos. So you're also at a very big disadvantage physically, health-wise, because you're not getting that immunity. You're not getting all of those things that you need from the mother's milk. You're getting formula. And so, you know, I was a pretty sick kid, sick all the time, as a matter of fact, for several years. So there's a lot of things that happen that are deficiency-wise. So this is why that extremes comes in. We start coming into extremes. And the reason why is because part of the fawning, part of our people-pleasing behaviors, part of us being highly sensitive to all of those around us, is that we get into this frame of mind that that's the only way we can navigate life. And so depending on the type of developmental trauma that you had, this is going to show up in the extremes in your life, okay? So if you are severely emotionally abused, you are going to be the type of person that has a disorganized attachment. So 1 minute you're anxious, 1 minute you're feeling like you're being abandoned, 1 minute you're going to feel like you're going to fear ever getting close. Okay, so you have this avoidant part of the attachment. You have all of these things going on in your relationships, but you're also going to feel extreme in the fact that when you get into a relationship or you get into an environment, you are going to be over the top trying to give that to others. Okay, the deficiencies that you have had make you go over the top when it comes to what you give to others. Okay, so in the protocol we even look at our love languages, because this is important. So let's say that my love language is words of affirmation and physical touch. And there's no coincidence here. Maybe those are my love languages because I never got those, right? So now we are over the top with how we give words of affirmation to others, and we are over the top with how we try to give affection or physical touch to others, okay? And the extreme is, it's not just you really, really craving and needing those things. It's the fact that you think that that is the secret to a healthy relationship. You think that that's what's going to keep people from abandoning you and leaving you and all of these things. So this rolls into the other part, that if you were sexually abused, and this is, those same hormones I talked about that you didn't get in the womb and you didn't get breastfeeding, well, we get those when we have sex, okay? So from an early age, if you're already experiencing that, and that is your bonding with someone, we can see how this ends up being sexual fawning. And when we think of sexual fawning, we think it's always, society, and historically we have felt that it's always been the female that gives into the male. And, there have been very high cases of that, but we need to understand, especially for the males that are out here listening to this podcast, we did the same thing. Not all men are ravenous hormonal dogs that will procreate with anything that walks, okay? There are many of those out there, but there are also highly sensitive men like myself that developed in a way that sexual intercourse became our chance to bond. It became our chance to be loved, to feel love, to feel like we belonged, okay? And so what happens is we get into these relationships that are purely based on that, okay? And now the extreme comes in, okay? So in order for me to be in these relationships, okay, you got to be the best, right? You've got to do whatever it takes to pleasure this other person, okay? Even if it's stuff that you don't want to do, okay? This is what you need to understand, and this goes for male and female. We end up doing things that we don't even want to do because we feel like this is the only way that we're going to hang on to this person, okay? This is the only time we feel close, okay? I remember having a girlfriend back in high school, and we talked about that we were either effing or fighting. And that's exactly what happened, because the only time we had anything in common was when we were in the bedroom, okay? And getting that pleasure. And I need you to also understand that this isn't even about the physical pleasure so much. We find ourselves very giving and very sacrificing in the bedroom. Your pleasure is based 100% off of the other person's. It's almost like you can't even achieve orgasm unless the other person is getting pleasure, okay? And here comes the extreme. I know in my case it was never about, we both have an orgasm. It was about, I want the female to have several, okay? That's what we need to understand. I wanted my partner to have way more. Like, I want this to be a memorable experience for her so that she never goes anywhere else, right? Unfortunately, that doesn't work, does it? And so we get to this point where we become sacrificial in everything that we do when it comes to relationships, whether it be in the bedroom or whether it be, I have to always one up my partner. If they say something nice about me, I've got to say 10 times, the amount of nice things about them. If they do something physical for me, I've got to do it 30 times more for them. It literally becomes a set of scales in the relationship, and you're always trying to be above on your side of the scales, okay? So you can see how this destroys relationships, because this physical part of the relationship, it's not going to last forever. Eventually, you're looking for more, okay? And if your relationship is based off of that physical, the very intimacy and the nurturing and the belonging that you're seeking from that partner, you're not going to get, because this relationship is on a very, very fragile foundation. It's based on something that isn't biblical, number one. Number two, it's not based on anything healthy. You're not really bonding. It's a false sense of bonding based on hormones and chemistry. So this is one of the extremes. And like I said, if this has led you to multiple partners, if this has led you to have some regret, some sadness, some shame, you're going to have to let that go. Okay? This is one of the things that we talk about a lot in our videos, is that shame and guilt rule the day. And as long as there's shame and guilt, you're never going to be able to understand who you are. You're never going to be able to accept forgiveness. And you're never going to be able to redeem yourself or move forward. And so we do have to get, I know it comes in layers. It comes in layers for me. You'll feel like you're doing really well, and then the shame and guilt comes again. And so we have to work through these things. But I need you to understand that you did the things that you did not because you're a bad person or that there's something wrong with you. You did them because this is how you were conditioned. This is how you were developed. Okay? Now, can you get to that point where you can be monogamous with one partner and all these things? Absolutely. Absolutely you can. Okay? Does it always end up that you're with the right partner? Maybe not. And we'll talk about that more too, because things change. But that's just one of the extremes. Okay? So another extreme is that you, especially if you have been belittled emotionally or verbally, we find ourselves never being good enough, right? And so we are constantly seeking approval. We are constantly seeking affirmation. And then the sad part is that when we get that, we don't even enjoy it. We have cognitive dissonance, which means that we're very, very uncomfortable getting any kind of praise because we never did. And so then, once again, you start feeling, okay, the critic comes in and it's like, okay, well, I'm not even good enough for that affirmation. I'm not good enough to receive this. I need to do better, okay? So we end up being the person at work that outworks everybody else. We work more hours, we do more, we don't take breaks, okay? And then we get exploited, okay? Because from a fiscal imperative, if I'm an employer and I pay this guy X amount and I pay this guy X amount and this guy's doing this much more, it's a win for me, right? I'm getting this much more production out of this guy because he has a self-esteem problem. That's not my problem, okay? And so you become the guy that always says yes, right? Can you work overtime? Yes. Can you work the holiday? Yes. Okay. So what is that doing to your relationship at home? What is that doing to your marriage? What is that doing to your children? Sadly, oftentimes they are grown before we really understand the impact. And we understand that all of that we put into the world has no return on our investment. And we have potentially damaged our marriage. We have potentially damaged the relationship with our children. And the whole time we really thought we were doing the right thing. Because the other extreme is, whether you're a husband or a wife, or you're in that whatever role you choose in the relationship, the other extreme is that I've got to be the best at that, right? And so I'm supposed to work, I'm supposed to provide, I'm supposed to protect. I've got those traditional, they're starting to call it toxic masculinity, whatever. But those are the values that I have. I need to provide, I need to protect, I need to take care of my family in that way, okay? And a huge part of that is I need to sacrifice, right? We sacrifice our health, we sacrifice having clothing, food, whatever. Like if there's food on the table many, many times, I would make sure everybody ate. And I would eat what was left, almost like, the dog under the table gets the scraps, whatever. But this is what I'm talking about. We go to extremes. And even if the people around us don't want us to do that, they become accustomed to that, whether it's conscious or subconscious. And now we get to where we start getting white hair and we start to get bitter because everybody around us has kept us in that role. But we need to understand that we created the role. We have conditioned them to think that dad is always last, right? Dad is always going to get, drive the crappiest car. Dad is always going to be the one who doesn't get clothes. If we need clothes, dad is going to be the one that doesn't get medical attention. If we need, they've been conditioned. And your wake up call can be looking at your children and what they've developed into. My family, the girls ended up, being more in a selfish role and expecting dad to be this person. And then I started seeing my son act like I did. And that's when I really started to wake up to what I was doing, was seeing it in my son, where he felt like he had to be behind his sisters, and he had to make sure that his sisters had everything, and he felt like he couldn't ask for anything. And that's when I really started waking up to this, was seeing the product of what I had conditioned with my children. And so all of these things happen for a reason, because this was how I had to start changing. I had to understand that it's not selfish to do self-care. It's not selfish to provide needs for yourself, because ultimately, if you're going to be the provider, the protector, or whatever, I need to be 100%, right? I need to be as close to 100% as I can be if I'm going to stay healthy and be able to provide those things. Okay, so it's not a selfish thing. And, spending a lot of time with my son, helping him understand that, you guys are equal in this household, and we love you all equally, and you're all going to be provided for. So when you have a need or a want, you need to bring it to the table. And sometimes it's going to be a yes, and sometimes it's going to be a no based on what's available to us, but you need to know that you're all even. Okay, so that's another extreme. We talked about work, we talked about sex, we talked about our family role. Okay, another extreme is caring for others, what that looks like. Okay, we tend to be very highly sensitive people. We tend to be empathic. We tend to put people that aren't even in our household in first place ahead of us. So, like, as a leader, or as whether it be in the military as a leader, or in the workplace as a leader, we call it being a tough, caring leader, which is a great model of leadership, but it can't be to the point where you sacrifice ahead of everybody else. Okay. Like, if something has to be done outside and the weather's bad, you're the one who goes outside and does it. And I'm using examples. This is what I do. Okay, I endanger my own health. When I have people half my age that are much more equipped to do more physical things, I still find myself feeling like I have to be that person. I have to outwork everyone. I have to out-sacrifice everyone. I have to always have a one-up on everyone. And so these are just many of the extremes. Okay, the final extreme that I want to talk about, that is really, and there's many more. There's not enough time in a video to talk about this, but I want to talk about one that is the most extreme, that I believe that affects the most people with CPTSD. A very common thread that we have, that I encounter with myself and with clients all the time, is the fact that when we love in the most extreme way. Okay, it is over the top. Okay, and there's lots of reasons why. We have to get to a point where we can even figure out what love is. Then we have to figure out how to let our guard down and be vulnerable, which means the inner child that we've spent our entire life protecting gets to come out of his cage, or come out of her cage, and we start to show that part of ourselves to someone. That is the ultimate gift. It really, really is. If people could only understand the gift that you're giving them when you allow them to see who you really are. You have worn a mask your entire life. You have been someone else. You have done all of these extremes in a way to protect yourself, so no one can see that vulnerability. No one can see that sensitivity, because you think it's weakness, because you think that it makes you soft. It doesn't. It's really the core of who you are, and it's made you who you are, and it's made you, stronger. It's made you more resilient. It's made you have the ability to accomplish things that many, many people can't. And so we need to start looking at the positives here, okay? But as we're looking at these positives, we also need to get to a point where we start creating some healthy boundaries, so that we aren't exploited, because people will exploit us physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so we need to save these extremes. We need to save 100% of ourselves for those that deserve it, that are going to reciprocate. Okay, we have an emotional bank account that we're constantly making withdrawals, and we're constantly giving away, and we are often in a negative balance all the time, because no one else is putting back in. Okay, And so when we love, okay, we're going to talk about this is a big dancing with the darkness thing. Okay, this is a big yin and the yang thing. Okay, and it may hit home, and if it hurts, I'm sorry, but I understand. Okay, when we pour out to someone in that way, it is about the closest thing there is to God's love. God loves us unconditionally, and we are not capable of that as human beings, but it is pretty daggone close, okay? Because we are willing to do anything for that other person. We are willing to suffer. We are willing to die for that other person. We are willing to give them everything and have nothing. And that is the ultimate expression, okay? And so when we experience betrayal and we experience heartbreak, those of us out there that have CPTSD, the rest of the world doesn't understand. Okay, they don't understand the magnitude of the pain that we feel. It feels like not just the end of a relationship, it feels like the end of everything. It feels like the end of your dreams, your hopes, your future, your only chance at happiness. It just feels like an ending, period. Okay, we already know that with CPTSD, because of lost time and all of these things, that we have been conditioned to never be able to look at tomorrow anyway, right? We barely make it through today most of the time. We can't handle tomorrow. We can't see tomorrow. It's a Groundhog Day every day. And so the reason I'm talking about this is because I've experienced it, and I've talked to some clients that, this put them in a bad way. They were doing well, they were in recovery, they were healing, they finally felt like they were in a stable relationship, and they opened up and they let this person see who they really are. And this person actually seemed to embrace who they really are and give them a sense of being heard and a sense of belonging. And then the rug gets pulled out. Okay. And so this is why cognitive behavioral therapy can be very damaging as a therapy model. There's so many therapists out there that's what they were taught in school, that CBT fixes everything. And this is why for someone with CPTSD, it can be very detrimental, because if we trust the evidence, if we try to dispute our beliefs, we're not going to go anywhere with that. We're actually going to reinforce the negative beliefs, because in our life, everyone has hurt us. Everyone has betrayed us. We are not lovable. We are not good enough. Okay. And it's because it's a pattern. We have continued to be around individuals that exploit us that way, treat us that way, because it's what we know. So it's a double-edged sword there. Okay. And that's why with CPTSD, it has to be a very holistic, personalized treatment plan. Why do you think that they can't even put CPTSD in the DSM? Because it is so complicated, complex, that we can't even put it in there, because it crosses over with everything. 1 minute it looks like bipolar, 1 minute it looks like OCD, 1 minute it looks like histrionic disorder. The list goes on. So these extremes are how we live, okay? And living these extremes and being able to put in healthy boundaries are difficult, but you can do it, okay? This is why we need to understand who we are. That's the who we are part of this, okay? I know what my temperament is. I know that I have developmental trauma and that developed my personality and character, okay? I know that there's some epigenesis there, that there's a genetic component, okay? Well, the temperament and the epigenetic component are 52%. So that's 52% that we're not going to change, that we're going to have to accept. We have to know what that is and understand it, okay? But 48% of us, which is personality and character and attachment and all of these other things that make us who we are, we can heal, okay? So you're going to be almost 50% better than you were, which is a huge improvement, okay? But I would go further. I think it's more like 75%, because just knowing who we are, how God crafted us, how did we get where we are, why do we do the things that we do, is huge. Because we can start creating some healthy boundaries. We can start creating some safety mechanisms that are healthy for ourselves, okay? So for those of you that are facing this tremendous heartbreak, where you think that this was the one all be all person and they have broken you beyond brokenness, it's really a lie from the pit of hell. Okay? What did I say at the very beginning? We have a set of dark forces out there that feed the darkness within us, and they exploit every weakness. Okay? But they will never have the power that the light has. They are not omnipresent like God. They cannot read our thoughts like God. Okay? And so what we verbalize out loud and the patterns that we create are the only thing that they can see and the only thing that they can exploit. So as we create boundaries and we change our patterns and we're more careful about what we speak out loud, that's a huge part of our healing process. The other part of it is understanding that as we heal, we are going to have more discernment, okay? And that discernment is going to help us really, really understand who is safe and who can I open up to. This is a huge part of this channel and why I'm here speaking to you today, because we often find that I am going to trust people like you and you're going to trust people like me because we understand the impact of everything that I just talked about. We understand those extremes. We understand how we love. We understand how we work. We understand these things, okay? And so we are way less likely to ever betray another human being when we have that level of intimate bond with this other person, okay? So that's why this channel is here. That's why I do the YouTube. That's why I painstakingly do this every week, no matter how I'm feeling, whether I feel like doing it, whether I'm hurting, whether I want to do it, I do it because you're out there and you're hurting and I understand it. And the only way that we're going to heal is through this type of dialogue. If this video spoke to you today, please do us a favor and make a comment. Whether it's negative or positive, I don't care. You're verbalizing whatever you're feeling, and that is healing. So please do that. My email is listed on the site. If there's something of a more personal nature that you would like to discuss, email me and we'll set it up. If I can't get you help through myself, I'm more than happy to help you find something that's close to you in your area or that will be a better fit for you. This is I'm dedicating the rest of my life to this, and that's just it. I'm solid, I'm consistent. These are the individuals that we need in our lives. Solid and consistent and trustworthy, who have morals and ethics and values that are unsurpassed. Until we meet again for the next video, I just want you to know I understand what you're going through. I pray for each and every one of you on a daily basis because I know the pain that you're carrying. But I also know that there's hope, and that hope comes from all of us as a community. So don't do this alone. Don't isolate. You don't have to. Until next time, God bless.